Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Mind Talk podcast with myself, Edwin. And today's episode, I have a sports psychologist on who we're going to talk about her journey in terms of her sporting journey, but we're also going to move on to the sports psychology part. And I'm sure there's going to be some great things that come out of this episode that will help some of you that are listening today. So, Cara Graham, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm not too bad. It's a sunny day now over here, but yeah, it's good. I don't know about where you are, but
No, where are you based? You've got sunshine.
I'm in Southeast London. Um,
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
yeah, so yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, thanks again. So I'm going to ask you a question that I ask all of my guests. What was your first sporting experience?
Oh gosh, first sporting experience would be sports day.
Hmm.
I trained for sports day when I was 5 years old. We had to do the pajama race, egg and spoon race, a sprinting race, and like the sack race. And I think I was about five or six, and me and my dad trained for it for about 3 weeks. No word of a lie, in the garden on the landing in our house, and there was a very clear focus. Was I was going to win because you got a trophy, and the trophy was about yay big, and you got to put your name on the front,
Yeah.
and that was the only thing I wanted to do. And I did the pajama race so quick that I nearly got disqualified
Oh,
because I'd finished it before the rest of the kids had figured it out.
yeah.
And what me and my dad had clocked on to was if you sit down to put the pajamas on, it's way quicker. I'm five. I can't do it stood up. So you sit down, put them on, and then off I go. Picked very specific pajamas, not the ones with the elastic on the bottom.
Yeah.
It was on, and off we flew.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it was just the first time I remember being like very focused for something and winning and just being like, okay, that was the first race done. It was kind of like a heptathlete almost. It was like, okay, pajama race done, check. Egg and spoon race, not my strongest event. Not going to get any points from that. Don't worry about it. Sprinting race, check. Going to get the points from that. And then I did the relay with like the year 5 or 6 girls, which to me, they were like grown ups. And I held my own. It was like, check. And I won like, I don't even know what it was, but I got the trophy. And that was kind of my very first sporting experience.
From experiencing that, did that kind of push you to want to do it a bit more?
I would say I fell in love with athletics probably that day. Like for me, the speed of it, the adrenaline, the cheering of everybody kind of around you, like that from that moment on, I think most people around, like my family will tell you, like athletics has been my first and only love. And it started at a very, very young age and it kind of just got worse or better, depends on which way you want to look at it.
Being young, I know with some young kids they don't watch you on TV. Was there anyone on TV that you watched that you actually loved watching through their journey?
Marion Jones.
Okay.
So I was a massive Marion Jones fan before the scandal. And it helped like her birthday was the day before mine. So, when you're a kid, that's like the ultimate connection to somebody. Like we have the same birthday, kind of, but not really. But I think for me, I remember very clearly watching Donna Fraser come fourth at the Olympics. Now, not the most notable, and she would probably be like, I had more in me, but I stayed up for that Olympics. So I watched that 400. I stayed up. I missed school just so I could watch the Olympics, and that was kind of just probably the continuation of a journey for me in terms of in the world of athletics. That's where I want to be. That's who I want to see. Merlinotti, Marie Jose Perec. I was just all about just the females that were just kind of just kicking butt across the globe. For me,
Yeah.
they were just like absolute. Even Gail Devers over the hurdles. I can't hurdle to save my life, but she kind of set a tone of just what it could be at that big stage.
Then you got a bit older. So how was it like in terms of transitioning to actually training for the event? Because as a kid, you do it for fun and you want to just like beat everyone. But how did it move into the training side?
Um, I think I went down to the track. So we had a track about 5 minutes from my house, which is Ilford AC. So I joined Ilford AC to start off with, and it was just racing. It to me, it was just kind of more opportunities to race. It wasn't training. It was just let's just go out and race. But you race 8 times in the space of an hour. Then I transitioned over to pneumatics beagles, and the training kind of became training, and that's kind of like my first taste of lactic and just finding out how to manage yourself. Like you've done a full day worth of school, and I went to a pretty sporty school. Then to go and do 2 hours worth of training in the cold But for me, it was always something that I loved to do. So it never felt like work. It was just, I had this opportunity and I wanted to be there in the rain, in the cold. That's just the only place I wanted to be now. Did it change as I got older and kind of realized that this hurts and you can do all of this and not run a PB? Definitely. But I think up until about 17, for me, it was always going to be fun. Then that transition came of, okay, what are you doing this for? So I think I finished my under 17 year fourth in the country for the 300 and top 10 for the 200. So then you got that taste of, okay, you get to like go all over the place and beat girls in different areas. Then for me, it was just about the US. That was the next target. Was I wanted to be in the States and run in the States. And my theory was, if you're going to be the best, you better train around the best, because the US had at that time had the best team in the world.
So how was that move, moving across there initially, the first stage of it?
What do you mean? Like, how did I get to the scholarship, or
Yeah.
once I arrived? How I got the scholarship? So my parents paid for an agency to kind of help me. They were of no help. I can't remember the name, so I can't even tell people to avoid them. I printed off the NCAA Division One list, and I went through each coach, and I found each sprints coach, and I emailed each sprints coach a picture of myself and my PB, and basically begged them to give me a full scholarship because I couldn't afford anything else. I got some traction. There's 360 something schools in the D1, so my odds were always going to be pretty decent. Um, had some not so great schools kind of reach out and be like, hey, we'd be really interested. And then I started to figure out, okay, power of 10 schools, power of 10, sorry, Big 10 schools and Big 12 and SEC. And that was kind of how I just started to pick apart the process. And it was just the coaches that were the most interested, really, and that could offer a full scholarship. And then my last criteria was, were the school colours nice? Because I figured I'm gonna have to wear it for 4 years. There's just certain colours I did not want to be in for 4 years. I
Yeah.
think I turned down Syracuse because I was like, orange just isn't my colour.
Yeah.
And I ended up at Iowa, which was black and gold, the same as New and Essex Beagle. So for me, again, it was like, okay, it all ties in. And I've been wearing it for the past 4 years anyway, so I can do another 4 years in it.
What do you think gave you that drive to push and reach out to coaches? Because a lot of people wouldn't have that drive at that age of reaching out to coaches in another country. So it's out of your comfort zone. What do you think pushed you?
Um, I just think sheer stubbornness. I think it's just part of my personality. If I set my mind on something, I'm gonna throw everything behind it. The agency, like I said, they weren't doing much, and for me, it was like, well, it's now or never. I don't know what else to do. I don't know how else the system works. Let me just reach out to coaches and kind of see what I can get back. Um, yeah, I think it's just sheer in tenacity on my part, to be honest.
And then when you moved across, did you was well, obviously athletics was the main thing, but obviously study is one of the reasons why you're going there. How much was that in your mind when you were moving? Not at all.
I remember unpacking, getting my room set up. My mum and dad had bought me a laptop, and my roommate was there. She's from Trinidad, and she had a book bag, and she had like notepads and pencils and pens. And this was a day before the semester started. I remember being like, "Oh, I've got to go to class tomorrow." Hadn't occurred to me, hadn't thought about it. The laptop was just cool because I got a new laptop. Hadn't occurred to me. Like literally the day before, and I was like, I'm gonna have to study, aren't I? She was looking at me like, well, that's why we're here. Hadn't occurred to me. Didn't even. I knew always what I wanted to study, but it just for me, it was just getting out to America and getting a scholarship was the main goal.
Yeah. So you started the training there, and you were going through the system. How was it like adapting to that? Because it's completely different. Obviously, the collegiate system is wild, but it's it's great. How was that for you?
Hard. It was hard on a lot of levels. I think now that I look back on it, I lost my identity. So I was in a predominantly white school. I was the tall, fast black girl. Even amongst the world of athletics, like if you think nationally, I'm 5'11", so there's not going to be that many girls. I was still like the tall, fast black girl from London, maybe. And then I went over to the States, and my identity just got shifted because I was just about the tallest by about half an inch. I'm not the fastest by any stretch of the imagination, and I'm not the only black girl. And it was just kind of like, well, who am I then? Then you put on top of that the training, and there were many a tears, Many kind of just coach, I don't think I can do this. Maybe you want to send me back home and I'm comfortable if you do. Um, and I had to really kind of dig deep. Like I was used to training hard before in the UK, but this is every single day. And I went in January, so I wasn't able to just do like a season of training. I jumped into training and competition. So we would train Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, get on a coach Friday, drive all day Friday, maybe race Friday afternoon, race Saturday, come back all day Saturday and have Sunday off. Just an absolute adjustment. And then I've still got studies to do. I've still got study hall to do on top of all of that. And I'm just exhausted. We've got weights at 7 a.m., class that starts at 7:30, and then back to the track at 2, plus study hall, and I've got to eat and sleep and try and have a social life in the midst of all of that. It was such an adjustment. I think I spent 2 or 3 days just in tears. Like every week, I actually begged my mom, "Can I come home?" Every Wednesday we had a phone call, and it was like, "Can I come home? Like I don't think I can do this. I made a mistake. I'm homesick. This is so hard." Um, and she was fantastic, and she's also a psychologist. And she was like, "Let's just talk in 2 days' time. We'll see how you go." And between the Wednesday and usually the Saturday, something good would have happened, and then we'd start the cycle all over again. And we did that for 6 months until I came back, and she was like, "Hey, just 2 more weeks, and you'll be home anyway." So oh yeah, I can do that. But yeah, it's an adjustment. It really was an adjustment, but definitely the best decision I made.
Do you think you got some growth out of that period?
Yeah, 100%. I think it was the making of me.
Mm.
I think if I'd come back, it'd have just been too comfortable. I was around some of the most incredible. I mean, one of my teammates was, I think when I got there, she was a 7-time All-American, and she just got back from the Olympics carrying her country's flag. That was my training partner. So it was kind of like it's time to step up. If you're going to do this, this is what you said you've always wanted to do. You either step up or you go home and you go back to your comfort zone. And I stuck it out, and I'm glad that I did. It was definitely a growth period.
Yeah. How was it like for you adjusting to a different coach and system and then a different coach compared to when you were in the UK?
God rest his soul, I hated my coach when I first got there
Mm.
because in my mind he was the one that had pulled me away from everything that I knew.
Mm.
So I hated him, and I didn't hide it. Everybody knew it, and it wasn't him personally. Coach Grant was incredible. It was just he was the person that pulled me away. He was the reason that I was in tears. He was the reason that I'd felt lactic in places that I'd never felt it before. Um, so it took us about 2 or 3 months for he and I to kind of click. Once we did,
Yeah.
we were absolutely fine. Um, but in the States, you also got to remember, like the coaches, there's a quick turnover of coaches as well. So you might have a coach your freshman year, and a different one your sophomore year, and a different one your junior year. My coach was fantastic. He was really good. The training was just so different, and the expectations are different. Once you go to the States, it's a job. It becomes a job. It's not like over here where it was my dad was my coach for a little while, then it was Lloyd. So, it was a lot more relaxed. Whereas I'm going over there, it was Coach Grant. There was a very strict expectation between he and I. And fundamentally, yeah, it becomes your job. It stops becoming a hobby. It's something that they are paying you to do and you have to execute. And his expectations were very high of the girls that he brought in who were international just because he knew that, you know, it's expensive. I mean, we're talking 30, 40 grand at Iowa. Um, and the challenges were always going to be there. But it was a great experience. I mean, I can't fault it. And Coach Grant was amazing and taught me so much just about how to sprint and toughened me up a lot. So it definitely toughened me up a great deal.
Yeah. So obviously, unfortunately, you had to go through experience where he passed. And how did you cope mentally in terms of training and running at that point?
So in the midst of all of that, Coach Grant passes the July. I get diagnosed with cancer the September, and I start chemo at the end of September. So between the space of like 4 or 5 months, it was just absolute chaos, mentally, psychologically, physically. It's all coming at me 110 miles per hour. I went back to the States after he died with the intention of, I'm going to honor his memory, as I think most athletes do when a coach passes. They'd want to see me succeed, and I was quite determined to be like, hey, he wanted me to run the 4. He recruited me to eventually run the 4. I'm going to go back. I'm going to do those 4 training sessions, and I'm going to honor his memory. I did 2 sessions before I ended up in hospital myself. So it was very much a whirlwind of emotions. I was still in the grieving process. My squad was still in the grieving process. And I remember finding out and be like, I've got to tell the team that I've been diagnosed with the exact same thing we just lost our coach from a month ago. And having to stand at 19 in front of my entire squad and just say, like, hey guys, I was in the hospital this weekend. I've been diagnosed with cancer. And just one of the faces, I just remember just watching her just sobbing. And she and I were close, but I also know it was just a build up of emotion that we'd just done the memorial for Coach Grant, I think about 10 days beforehand. And I'm now telling them, guess what? I have the same thing. We're all still really young. And it hit all of us kind of like a ton of bricks. Um, so yeah, there was no real time to kind of process his loss because I was then dealing with my own situation.
Was there anything that you could draw from your athletics experience mentally that helped you during that cancer journey?
Yeah, my mum always said I was very task focused, which was I have 6 rounds of chemo to do, so I just got to focus on 6. And I just kind of saw it as like any kind of workout, you've got 6 to do. You mentally prepare yourself for 6. And I was so tunnel visioning. Okay, I've got 6, I've got 6, I've got 6. To my detriment, that when they then said to me, you've got to do a month of radiation, I was not mentally prepared for that. So ironically, that's what floored me was a month of radiation. And that was the easier part, to be honest, but I had mentally prepared myself like, I can do 6. It's 6. I've got recovery time. It's just like a hard workout. I go into hospital for a week, lock in, come home, recover, and I go back again over the course of 3 or 4 months. But I just hadn't mentally prepared myself to be able to do the radiation at the end of it. And that's what I actually, of all the things I remember, that's one of the things I really struggled with, just because it's like a coach throwing a second part of the workout in, you're just not mentally prepared for it. Completely floored me. But I approached chemo like I did a training session, one run at a time, one round of chemo at a time. We don't think about round 6. We think about round 1. We make it to round 1, and then we prepare ourselves between round 1 and round 2 for the next round. And that was just kind of my mentality throughout the whole process.
So fortunately, you did recover from cancer, and when you did recover, how was the process of going back into to athletics?
Murder. It was probably the hardest part of the whole process, if I'm being completely honest. I just wasn't ready. So, in the midst of my diagnosis, what they said to me was, what would have happened was that the tumor was so large in my chest that it was pushing on my heart. And I would have run and sat down after a race and quietly had a heart attack, and nobody would have known. So, I've always got that going on in the back of my mind. Like, I remember there were some runs that I did that season just thinking, I am on my last legs and thinking like I just can't recover. I don't know what's going on. So I knew that there was probably some times there when I was probably very close to death's door. So you then fast forward to finishing chemo and having to go back to the same sport that maybe would have actually ended up killing me. It became this love-hate relationship. I now don't have the coach that I had when I was here last season. So I'm also still grieving him. I'm grieving myself, being carefree, never had any health issues. I now have a new coach and he and I have to find some kind of middle ground, which we struggle to do. And on top of that, the one thing that I've always loved, I just can't find that love for anymore. So I go back to training. I hate it. I go back to racing. I think my first race was the December of the following year, and I'm in tears on the start line. And everyone's like, what's going on? I was like, I just don't think I can do this. I don't think I have the capacity to do this. And it just became this entire process where again I'm just in tears, which is always a sign for me, like, okay, things are actually harder than I'm kind of realizing. Um, if I could have quit track, I definitely would have done. But I've got a scholarship and I've worked so hard for this scholarship, and this scholarship is so precious. What do I do? I just keep on pushing through. And I'd say, looking back on it, should I have walked away? Maybe I should have taken the red shirt that they offered me. So that athlete mindset, which is you just keep going, you keep going, you keep going, meant I went straight back into athletics. They offered me, University of Iowa offered me a red shirt to take that season to just get myself together. And I was like, nope, don't need it. I'm good to go. Like, let's keep going. And in hindsight, I probably should have taken it for 101 different reasons. But yeah, definitely should have done it.
At that point, did it make you refocus your education? Because obviously you went there mainly for athletics, but did it make you think, okay, I need to like take the educational side like really serious because that might be the route that I'm going down?
I'd like to say yes, and that I was that smart at that age, but no. It was just you just keep pushing with the athletics. It was just square peg round hole, and you just keep trying to make it fit, even though it's screaming at you that it isn't. Um, it made me fall in love with psychology, and that's kind of where my love of psychology and sports psychology really came about. Because physically, I was ready to go, but mentally, my brain was so far away from the start line for about 18 months after I came back. But physically, I was doing sessions, I was beating my training partners, like I was doing really well physically. So the
Mm,
coaches were like, she's good. But the emotional and mental toll just absolutely not there at all.
yeah. So what is it that you liked about psychology?
I think I truly understood like if your brain's not there, the rest of your body, it doesn't matter what it's saying. Like if your brain is the most powerful muscle you have, and as an athlete, it was like, well, if I can master my brain and I can get my brain fit, let's say, everything else will fall into place. And that's kind of where I was like, it made me appreciate another level of sport, to be honest with you. It's like psychology is great, but you layer that on top of the sport part of it, and athletes become untouchable if they can master their brain. Even an average athlete becomes amazing if they can master their brain. And it took me such a long time to master my brain. I was like, this is such a underdeveloped and under-resourced area. I need to just keep going.
So once you learn how to master your brain, what made you think I can help other people do the same thing?
I think I just wanted to be the person that I wish I'd had at that time.
Mm,
Had 19 or 20-year-old Cara had a sports psychologist who was like, okay, all your feelings are completely valid. This is a process. You've just lost your coach in the past year. Then you get diagnosed with the same illness that he had. You were in the same hospital that he was in, all in the space of 4 months. Like, that is so traumatic if you think about it. But
mm.
I just kept on pushing through. And I think the time that it took me to come back mentally, had I had somebody there, I would have just, it would have taken half the time. Oh, yeah, taken half the time.
So now that you've gone down this route, you're now a sports psychologist. What are the most common questions that you'll be asked by athletes, let's say you are going through a confidence crisis?
How do I get it back? How do I get it back? What did I do? I don't know what's going on. A lot of athletes, whilst they know their body, they don't always understand their mind. So they know if they're a footballer, they know, okay, yeah, my first touch just isn't great right now. I need to work on that. And they'll keep going. And as athletes, we're taught to do repetition. So it's like, my first touch isn't great. Let me just keep practicing that, keep practicing it. If you're a high jumper, you keep trying to practice your takeoff. Your mental side, if you say, okay, I have a problem, you don't just keep harping on the problem. You've got to figure out, okay, when did it start? Why did it start? And how do I get back to where I was? But that's the part that most athletes are always missing, which is
Hmm.
instead of dwelling on the problem, where did the problem start? Have you ever felt like this before? And if you have, how did you get yourself out of it before? Because clearly you have done. And what was the triggers that got you into this point? So there's usually always a trigger. It's just being able to pinpoint it and then being able to backtrack, which most athletes just don't do very well at all.
Yeah. Do you ever find your like with athletes that there might be an athlete where the trigger doesn't seem like it's very obvious, and then the trigger is, let's say, something to do with a parent or like childhood trauma. Like
Mm-hmm.
when those situations happen, what are the type of things that you would have to recommend to them to help them going forward?
I think the first point of call is really simple. It's just acknowledging it. It's just, I know for me, if you go back to myself and coach has died, huge loss. You then get diagnosed with something that could take you out of your sport, huge fear. You have to face your own immortality at 19. Crazy. Let's just acknowledge it. Let's just acknowledge, okay, this is a problem. There's nothing we can do about childhood trauma. There's nothing that we can do that, our parents are overbearing, but we can acknowledge that, okay, the way that my dad talks to me before I go to play football actually makes me really anxious. And now that we know that, then we can address it rather than No, it's not a problem. It's all fine. It's all great. We have this habit of just kind of pushing it all down, but it's acknowledging like, okay, yeah, it makes me really anxious. If we can address that, perfect. But if we can't, can we then change how we respond to how dad talks to us? Can we maybe see that what he's doing is he's trying to show that he cares, or is he trying to show that he's got interest in your career? It comes off as pressure to you, but really, bless his heart, he's just trying to be like, you better go out and win today. That's his way of being like, go, I believe in you, I think you're awesome. And especially with immigrant households, the translation sometimes gets missed where the kid hears it as a lot of pressure, or my dad's always on me, or mum's always on me. And if you to ask a parent, they're like, I just want them to do well. Like they love this sport and I put a lot of money in it and I want them to do well. And it sometimes just gets that cross communication. So it's just acknowledging, I think, that there's an issue, and then from there, let's just unpick it. How can we manage it better? We can't always change the situation, but can we get a better understanding of it and manage our emotions in that situation better?
Being a sports site, do you ever do you just work with older athletes, or do you work with young athletes as well?
I've got 13 to 32 on my books right
Okay.
now. So I've got the full gamut of, little Sunday league, and I've got world class athletes who, mortgages are being paid based on their
Yeah.
performance and everything in between. So I've got a little bit
Yeah.
of everything.
And with that, do let's say with the young athletes, and the issue might be related to their parents or someone else. How do you how do you navigate those situations where it might be a conversation where coming from them it might not be beneficial? It has to come from someone else. How do you navigate those situations?
I will always try and have a conversation with a parent to get a sense, especially when they're at that age. The parents, 95% of the time, have a huge impact on how a kid views the sport. Um, I will try and maybe have a conversation like, I know, you're trying to be super supportive, but what they're hearing is that you don't believe in them. And most parents are just unaware. It's not, there's no rule books to being a parent. They're all trying to do their best. If they've paid to have a sports psychologist, they clearly want their kid to do well. So it's not a case of it's neglect. It's they're trying their hardest and they've just come up without any ideas. Sometimes it falls on deaf ears. But I will always do my best to advocate for the athlete itself and for the kid, just to be like, I know what you're trying to do, but how they're seeing it, it's not landing the way you want it to land.
Do you find that there's some sports that are they're more open to sports psych than other sports? Because I know, well, in this country, because I know in the US it's a big thing, but how do you see it in the UK?
It's growing. The US with TikTok and COVID, I think a lot of the US started to creep into the culture here, and that includes in sports. So you've got more teams that are mandating it now, and more parents are open to it. I don't think there's any sport that I can think of that's probably like the charger. I would always say athletics, but that's because most of my clients are athletics, probably because I'm in athletics. Um, but I wouldn't say there's one particular sport that's kind of charging the way. I think golf would probably be the one, and that's more so that mind body connection, just how precise it needs to be, would probably be the one I would pick. But I can't think of one off the top of my head that's probably the most kind of like ahead of the game or ahead of the curve. But the UK is catching up. It's starting to understand the impact that it can have.
Last question. So when it comes to working with athletes in the UK, and let's say some of their trauma might come from like how they're gonna survive, because athletics, for example, is a sport where if you're not one of the best, you're really not going to make that much money.
Mm-hmm.
What are the type of things that you would say to someone that basically their career is, well, paying their bills is kind of like really based on what they do out there with their performance?
I think taking the pressure off. So the temptation is to throw yourself into athletics even more because then I've got to be successful. So I've got to make the money because I've got to pay my mortgage. It's let's actually plan the plan B. Let's go into that dark space of, something goes wrong and your career ends tomorrow. Let's start planning for that now. And then what you'll find is that knowing that they've got a backup plan then starts to take some of that pressure off. It's just the weight that kind of has on their shoulders. The more you put on, the more the shoulders just go up and they can't perform, they can't run, the muscles start to tighten up. It's all connected. Let's make a plan B, and let's make a plan C, and let's make a plan D, and an E and an F until you're kind of like, okay, Carl, I'm just not willing to do this option. That's that option I'm just not willing to do. But we've got options now that you're comfortable that if push comes to shove, you can do that as of tomorrow. Can we find a way to bring in more income somewhere else just to take the pressure off the athletics or any sport? The temptation is always to throw yourself more into the sport. But in actual fact, taking a step from it, as with any problem in life, you take a step away from it and be able to look at the bigger picture. You can say, okay, I'm not loving this sport anymore because it has become every race, every jump is about my finances. Let me make a plan B. It's not me not being committed to my sport. It's giving myself the brain space to fall back in love with my sport and do it well. So I would just kind of, we'd go the complete opposite. We wouldn't even be talking about athletics for the next 6 sessions. It would be, what's your plan B? What are the finances? How can we make more money? What does your house look like? Let's go through all of your bills and let's go through all of it kind of very systematically. And then let's move forward. And once they get to that point, I usually get ghosted because they're like, oh, Cara, athletics is going brilliant, sport's going amazing. Because they've got more brain space now to actually concentrate on the sport that they want to do rather than the stress of, I've got to do it because I need to make money. Nobody enjoys anything like that. If you're going to do something, any sport, you have to love it. And that's my only criteria. If anybody I work with, you have to love it.
But is there ever any situation where you said that to them and then their coach is putting pressure on them? It's like, no, you have to you can't take a step back. You have to.
No,
No.
not that I've experienced so far. And touch wood that it doesn't. Coaches understand that they've got to pay bills in this day and age. I think in the US it might be a little bit different, if I'm honest. But here, for the most part, coaches understand like you've got to pay your rent or your mortgage and you've got bills to pay. And it's not always taking a step back completely from the training of the sport, it's just from the pressure of the sport. I think every athlete needs to have something else that they do outside of their sport, especially when your sport becomes your job. You need to have a hobby. When you're a kid and it's your hobby, you've got school, that's your job. Then when the roles reverse, you have to have something outside of your sport. And it doesn't matter if it's a religion, if it's fashion, if it's music, if it's whatever the case may be. I always think you have to have something outside of your sport. And most coaches these days are starting to understand they're more than just an athlete. You have to look at them as more than just an athlete.
100%. Cara, it's been a pleasure having you on. Where could people find you?
Instagram, KG Performance Psychology is the easiest way to find me. And yeah, from there, I will always touch base and have a conversation and see if I can help and if the vibe clicks.
Brilliant. No, thank you for coming on again. You definitely need to come back one day. There's probably a lot more that I would like to discuss with you about other areas of sports psychology. But no,
You let me
thank you
know.
again.
I'm always available. You let me know. Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. For those of you that are existing listeners, welcome back. For those of you that are new to the pod, welcome aboard. There'll be more episodes coming soon. Until next time, peace.